The Chemistry PLC for the 2017-2018 school year consists of Missy, Aaron, and Pragati. Between the three of us, we all teach some level of chemistry, whether it's regular chemistry, honors chemistry, or AP chemistry. What we have noticed over the years is that our students, whether they be regular chem students, honor chem students, or AP chem students, really struggle with scientific writing, specifically when it comes to the writing of a lab conclusion. The technical writing skills that are needed to write a concise and accurate lab conclusion is very different than what students are used to writing in maybe an English class. And so we really decided to focus our SLO this year on this scientific writing, or the skill of being able to write a lab conclusion. We gathered some baseline data at the beginning of the year, having students just sort of write a lab conclusion based on a generic rubric that we handed out, and from there then we developed our SLO. Our SLO for the Chemistry PLC states that by the end of the semester in January of 2018, 75% of the chemistry students who do not score a 9 out of 10 on the lab report conclusion rubric will increase their score by at least 1 point on their final lab report conclusion. So really, we're just trying to get improvement. A 10 would be a perfect score, so our SLO is targeting any kids who did not score at least a 9 out of 10 and trying to see some type of improvement, even if it's only 1 point over the course of their time in chemistry. The standard lab conclusion rubric that we developed is pretty straightforward and pretty laid out for the students. Within it, then, we expect their lab conclusion to have some type of guiding question or purpose for the lab. Oftentimes that is stated right at the beginning of the lab sheets that we hand out to them. We ask them to sort of summarize concisely and clearly the procedure that they did and why they did that procedure, talk about the data that they collected and why those data values were important, and then really talking about the results and the discussion. So for the argument portion of it, we kind of go to this claim, evidence, and reasoning or justification, where we're looking at their claim, which would be an answer to the guiding question or sort of the purpose of the lab, the evidence, so using multiple pieces of data, observations, etc., to support their claim, and then justification of the evidence. And really, this is something students struggle with the most. The justification would be sort of the large, big scientific concepts that students need to know or needed to understand in order to complete the lab. And so we provide students with this rubric, and they can sort of see what the difference between a proficient, developing, and basic would be for each one of these. For our baseline data, we really didn't discuss anything with them. We just handed out the rubric and sort of asked them to look through it and try to write a lab conclusion from that. After we gathered that baseline data, then we've now been looking closer at our rubric and talking with students about specific parts, just to give them an idea of areas that they can improve on. The back side of the rubric also talks about sort of using language and just sort of basic, was there proper grammar, correct spelling, writing in complete sentences, etc. Two things we emphasize and students seem to struggle with is that their lab conclusion should be written in past tense and that they should use a passive voice when they are writing it. And so that's something that's usually very different for students, and something that many of them struggled with after that baseline or that first initial lab conclusion. As I said, as we go forward, we are sort of breaking down the different parts of the conclusion and speaking with them specifically about things that they should be including, things they should be leaving out of their lab conclusion. We have provided them with an exemplar of a good lab conclusion, and we are also doing something where we're having the students track their own progress. So we created a sheet that looks similar to what you see on the screen, where for each lab that we ask them to write a conclusion for, they're going to list their title, they're going to write the score that they got, and then they're going to look really at the feedback and the scoring of it and hone in on the things that they did well and also focus on what they want to improve on next time. We also are going to have them graph their conclusion scores, so that hopefully they can visually sort of see their growth over time, which we think is important, that they understand that they are improving. And also, really, this sheet forces them to analyze the feedback that's given to them and forces them to look not just at what their overall score is, but what things did they do well at. Maybe they did a very good job at writing the procedure, but in terms of the improvement, they need to improve on their evidence and how they sort of stated their evidence in the lab. So we're hoping the student tracking sheet will give some accountability to the students and again help them to see their growth over time and also force them to look back at the feedback that was provided. So this is our goal for the chemistry PLC this year. We're hoping that if we hit it hard in the regular and honors chemistry classes, that by the time students get to AP chemistry, their writing skills will have improved dramatically. And really these writing skills are important for any technical writing and really any science class. So whether or not the students are moving on to AP Chem or maybe just another science class in general, hopefully we've given them some tools to writing proper lab conclusions.